So explain to me, like when you tell a story like YIZO, Shaka and whatever, how's that? Is that like the stories that you felt you were robbed as a kid?
We terrorized everybody. So we put Papa Action on a card.
Wow, so Papa Action was a real
character.
someone who existed.
Yeah, so we had Papa Action and then...
Damn, man. Speaking about Papa Action, why did he leave? Why did you change him to Zola 7?
Papa Action forces the other guy to suck on this gun and to masturbate, basically, or whatever. And so this is our audition scene.
That's wild, man. And the Netflix deal? Because I see it's on Netflix now. Well, how does that work?
Nothing to do with us. I mean, it's like...
For real?
No, we don't own that show.
Goodness.
Yeah,
So-
no.
Some descendants of some of the characters in Shaka iLembe weren't happy with how their ancestors were represented. I'm not sure which characters, it may be Nandi or so, but some family members weren't happy. How are you guys navigating that?
Couch casting. You've been in the game for a long time. Does that exist? I'm asking.
Where are you going?
I'm asking. Good, how was couch casting? Did you even have a couch back in the 70s? What do you say to people that say, why is a white person telling black stories? What do you have to say about that?
I apologize. I don't know.
You apologize. You know, to be honest with you, we really don't give a fuck about you.
We understand that.
The reason why we invited you, because we want to be in Shaka. So this is the only way.
We just wanted to lock you up in the room and be like, yo, man, we need cameos. We want to be in Shaka iLembe. No ways. No ways we're not going to go in Shaka iLembe.
Yeah, smart guys.
How are you doing, Mr. Angus?
I'm very well. I'm honored to be here. What can I say?
You know, when you walked in here, you look like a character from Game of Thrones. You could be like Jon Snow's father.
Yeah, I kind of, I've had that before. I'm trying to think, and poor Pops thinks I look like the guy from, can't remember. It's like short-term memory problem. But you know, long hair, there's the generic thing that goes on.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Game of Thrones? What did you think about Game of Thrones?
I've watched 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. And I think it's really good. And kind of, I think Shaka iLembe owes quite a lot to it. In the sense of the structure of Game of Thrones. Because you've got like Jon Snow, kind of who's a subsidiary character in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then you watch him become your main character.
Yeah.
So that kind of gave us comfort and courage to let Shaka essentially be a subsidiary character in the first season.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I've watched 2 seasons.
We're going to get into that, man. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and please welcome one of the greatest filmmakers, producers, directors this country has ever seen, Mr. Angus GIBSON. Did I leave out a title there? What else do you do in the film space? That's pretty much it, right?
What do you say I did?
You're a director, producer, filmmaker.
Sometimes write.
Write as well?
A little bit.
But where does your journey start, though? Do you start by writing, or did you start by picking up the camera?
I started out as directing. So I've never actually worked for anybody. Like, while I was at film school, I started making my own stuff.
Yeah.
And I worked with this other guy at film school who would do the camera work, I'd do the sound, I'd do the directing, and I'd do the editing. And that's kind of how it started. And in fact, I went to the Pretoria Film School, and at the end, you're supposed to intern for 6 months or something together to get your qualifications. And at the time, I didn't think there was anybody in South Africa that I wanted to work for, so I didn't do the intern thing, and so I am entirely unqualified. I dropped out of university. I dropped out of film school. Wow. So I'm a man with no qualifications.
Was the quality that bad that you looked around and didn't see anyone you could work for?
No, I think I was just young and arrogant. I'm sure there were good people then. There were, in fact. There were actually some really good Afrikaans filmmakers then. But I wasn't Afrikaans, and I wanted to do my own thing.
What was the climate like there? Like, did you guys have cinemas? Are the movies black and white at that time? Like, what's going on?
So, this is like the 70s, okay? Yeah. So that, in fact, is like when the best movies of all time were made. Because that was when Hollywood, the independents were really strong.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when The Godfathers came out and Apocalypse Now, all those Vietnam movies, in the way distant past. But that for me they were the great films. Yeah. And that was before the studios came in.
Okay.
So
you'd say the studios kind of messed everything up?
They did.
Okay.
Jaws came along, and then the franchises.
Yeah.
And then movies kind of went downhill. And now, of course, we've just been through a golden era of television, which now it feels like the streamers are starting to mess with. Now television is the thing.
Yeah. So take me back. So you're saying, it's the 70s. What's the scene looking like?
So, So when I was an adolescent, I was growing up in white South Africa.
Yeah.
Middle class, upper middle class. Everything just fine. Mm. And I was kind of intent on getting out of this country. Because, and I can't, I would like to say it was because I felt that sort of black people had such a raw deal and, and this was wrong and all of this. It wasn't that. It was like, I just hated the way things were around me. I hated the way people were dressed. I hated the way radio sounded.
The energy.
The energy. Well, I can't even blame it on Afrikaans. Everything. The energy felt really, it was something I didn't want to be part of.
Yeah.
So there's actually a very weird thing was I went to university and I did economics, which was a very stupid thing to do. And I sort of managed to pass my first 2 years and I dropped out in my third year. And my intention had been, get a degree, get out of the country.
Okay.
And avoid the army, right? If you're a white South African, then you had to go to the army. Whoa. So I dropped out and the army grabbed me. So there I found myself in the army.
You were in the army?
I was in the army.
Whoa. Jeez.
So anyway, I had all these university credits and they...
What were you doing at the army, if you don't mind
I was
asking?
In the infantry, in the worst possible situation. I was 8 months of hell in Kimberley and Bloemfontein and...
But you guys never got to fight anyone, though?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. Yeah. Because they suddenly realized that they had this really bad rep in the rural areas. And so they said they wanted to send teachers and doctors into the rural areas. And I had all these university credits. So I put my hand up and said, I'll go and be a teacher. And I was sent to this place called Batlaros, which was a Tswana area. Sort of the nearest town was Kuruman, in the middle of nowhere. And there was a chief's house. There was the school where I was teaching. There was a store. There was a little mission hospital. And then it was just mud, these really beautiful mud huts.
Yeah.
And I was there for 16 months. And suddenly I was living entirely, by myself in a black community, essentially.
Sure. It's crazy.
So, and suddenly I felt like I could look at South Africa in a different way.
Whoa.
So, and in fact, it was
the energies were aligned.
Yeah, and I sort of felt like, okay, this is a country that I can connect to in some way or other. So, weirdly, my army experience was completely formative for me. It was something I had sort of spent my entire youth thinking, I'm never going to go to the army, I'm going to avoid it, I'm never going to, And it became a formative and quite joyous experience, actually, ultimately in the end, because I understood at the end of my army, when I left that sort of safe space, I was returning to what
jungle.
South Africa still was, which was this completely separate space. So
when you see like wars nowadays, like what's happening in Israel and Palestine, do you get triggered?
I mean, it felt very particular, the South African situation. And the 80s for me was like, when I was in my 20s, and I felt very connected to what was happening here in South Africa. And I was very connected almost specifically to Soweto. I mean, it was like I spent a lot of time in Soweto in the 80s. And I was making films about South Africa and then sending them overseas. And so that's how I started, was doing documentary stuff. And most of it in the township. I had a lot of friends in that space. So it was through friendships that I got a kind of a perspective of different facets of South Africa.
Wasn't it weird as a white person going into the hood at that time, like into the Kasi?
I mean, it was ish. I mean, people were, I don't know, people were very friendly. And I knew people, so I was in the context of other people. I mean, I can remember, like, I was in Mzimhlophe on the railway bridge there one day, and these policemen came up to me and they said, "Are you okay?" kind of thing. So that kind of, I suppose, made me think, oh, okay. And in fact, I was actually hijacked. And I remember people saying to me, "No, you'll never, ever get hijacked. Never, ever." And it was the beginning of the 90s, actually. It was 91 or whatever. I was driving into Soweto, and I went to see a friend. And I stopped outside his house, and this guy came up to me with a gun, and he took away my car. And he shot at me. So anyways, I sort of ran into the house.
Jeez.
And my friend wasn't there. But then he came, and so I said, "Somebody's taking my car." And he asked me a few questions, and then he ran away. And so I sat there with his sister for a while, and about literally 10 minutes later, my car comes back.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember I said, "Hey," and he said, no, I knew who it was. I went straight there, and they say sorry. Yeah. So anyway, and then I looked in the back, and my bag wasn't there. And it had so in those days, you didn't have like a computer or anything. You didn't have a phone. You had a thing called a filofax. And like my whole life was inside this filofax, like all this diary sort of address thing. And I got my car back, but I said, "Shit, my filofax is gone." Like,
You can have the car. I need that filofax.
I need that filofax. So anyway, I was back there about 2 weeks later, and this guy came up to me and he said, "Please, God, you must forgive me." So I looked at him and I thought, this guy looks familiar. And then I realized, no, this is the guy that hijacked me. So I realized all I could remember was his hand and the gun, basically. I couldn't remember what his face looked like. So I had this bizarre conversation with him. So I said to him, "Hey, don't you..." Because it turned out he was the cousin of somebody that I knew, right? So that was why he was so regretful and all of this. So I said to him, don't you feel badly about, hijacking people? And he said, "Yeah, I do feel badly." He said, like, all this work, and they'll give me like 3,000 rand or something at the end of it. So it was the economics of it that worried him, not the morality of it.
The morality,
Yeah. And so that was kind of the 80s, the early 90s for me, which was very different to my growing up, which was in an entirely lily white space. I have a great family and I love my family, and I was the youngest, so everybody liked me. So I've got no complaints.
Yeah.
I've never been hungry in my life. It's like I'm kind of at the top end of the spoilt, queue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then where does your interest in telling black stories come from? Is it from when you at
Kuruman,
yes.
Close to Kuruman.
So there were two things that stick out in my head. I mean, one was that experience of being in Kuruman. I must tell you, actually, a very funny story in Kuruman was so on Friday nights, there used to be a thing called a Goomba.
Yeah.
Which was basically a guy would come with a generator and turntables, and he would play music in the dark there kind of thing. And that was Friday night. Anyway, I was there the night, it was during one of these Goombas that John Tate, who was an African-American boxer, met with Gerrie Coetzee, who was a white South African boxer at Sun City.
Wow.
So everything stopped. And there was everybody stopped dancing, and we stood around listening to this fight. And John Tate didn't take long to knock out Gerrie Coetzee. And all of a sudden, everybody turned to me, and these guys said to me, "Oh, we're really sorry." It was like the expectation was that I had identified with Gerrie, and that I'd been knocked out by the black guy. So that was a experience there, but a completely singular and unusual experience for me was I had university friends that got a house at Crown Mines, basically where F&B Stadium is now. And there were empty houses there, and they rented it as a commune. And I used to go and stay with them. And I walked from the house the one Sunday, and there's the mine dump behind it. And I climbed up on top of the mine dump, and I walked across the mine dump, which is a bit like crossing the Sahara Desert, because it was like this endless white sand. And I got to the other side, and on the other side of that mine dump is Diepkloof. So now, if you were to stand on that mine dump, you would look and there'd be that highway between you and Diepkloof. But then there was no highway. And I could see Soweto stretching into infinity. It was like this huge, huge landscape. And I'd never seen a township before. Okay, so that was how compartmentalized my life had been.
Wow.
I'd never seen a township.
Sure.
So in that moment, I kind of understood the scale of the lie, if you know what I mean. I kind of understood, and I had this incredible urge to walk down into that space.
And see what's happening.
But in fact, I was nervous. I was like this lone white guy standing on this hill. And I looked down and I could see life happening on those streets. I could see people kicking
Kids
balls
playing,
and I walked back across the mine dump back to that house. In fact, it was those houses that when Chris Hani, there was a memorial for Chris Hani. Do you remember there were some houses that were burnt? And it was one of those houses. So I suppose in that moment, I thought, I want access to all that I've been denied, basically, which was an understanding of broader South Africa.
Lovely.
And I suppose, that was it. And it was a complete marker. And from then, I sought to find my way into the spaces that had been denied.
Is this when you start bomb productions?
No. This is many years before.
This is the 80s,
Yeah, this is way before.
So, this is the beginning. This is probably the end of the 70s.
So as a white kid growing up, and I mean, you obviously see black people come to the suburbs either to do the garden or to clean or wash. You know, what are the parents saying? Where are these people coming from? If you guys aren't told about the township, it's a valid question.
Yeah, no,
Where do these people just come from and go away in the evening? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? Where are they going to in the evening?
So I suppose those questions weren't asked.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, that's the shock of it. So I ended up doing the autobiographical film on Madiba, right?
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time with him at one particular moment.
Madiba?
Yeah. Wow. But if you had asked me when I was 16 who Nelson Mandela was, I would not have been able to tell you who he was.
Wow.
I did not know there was this figure in prison. I barely knew. I knew there was a Robben Island and there were activists there, So there was, because also I grew up without television, right? So television came in the moment that I went to university.
You make TV, Murray grew up with that.
Yeah, no, so literally. So I grew up watching movies, not watching television. Television only came when I went to university. So the ability of that government to entirely compartmentalize and shut down information was incredible.
Was insane.
And I was like born in the perfect moment in terms of them, brainwashing, I suppose, what you would call it. Yeah.
That's wild, man. It's like you're talking about a different world, eh?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a very different and particular world. And I don't think there are. I mean, when I made a film recently in Colombia, in South America, and the divisions between poverty and extreme wealth feel familiar.
Got you.
I mean, the same with Brazil, in fact. If you go to
Brazil,
Rio and you see those favelas up against those tower blocks.
Are insane.
It feels familiar. And the other thing is that, I suppose with Colombia, it's a very, very warm society, but it's a very violent society. And I suppose it feels the same with us. If I think of South Africans, I think of us as being incredibly warm, incredibly giving on the one hand, and then incredibly violent on the other.
So explain to me, like when you tell a story like YIZO, Shaka, and whatever, how's that? Is that like the stories that you felt you were robbed as a kid?
I mean, before I made those, I made a lot of documentaries, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, in the last part of the 80s, I did a series of documentaries on the history of Soweto. So our rule with that documentary was that there were no experts. Nobody spoke about anybody else. You only spoke about your own experience. And the thing was, in that moment, they were still alive, the people that had been the first removals. They were still alive. And so I had spent years talking to people. And so I suppose, those experiences definitely informed the narrative stuff that I made. And because documentary was so important in my life, when I got to making dramatic stuff, I always look to the real world to try and find inspiration, to find the great stories, the truth of it. Yeah. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
So when do you start Bomb Productions?
With YIZO, actually.
YIZO.
Yeah. So I had finished doing the film on Nelson Mandela, which I did all the post-production in New York. So I spent a long time in New York. And I came back, and Tebogo Mahlatsi had been an intern at this collective called Free Filmmakers, which was in Yeovil, which was sort of a kind of a liberal filmmaking establishment in the 80s. And he and I had connected back then. And when I returned from New York, I said to him, well, why don't we do something together?
Yeah.
And I had this friend called Isaac Shongwe who said, well, he was a businessman, and he said, well, I'll support you.
Yeah.
So Tebogo and I started writing a script. And in fact, Tebogo said to me, you know what has never been done before is like a trash movie, like a real B movie, like, where people say fuck and, people speak the way people speak.
Yes.
And he said, well, and I said,
you basically talking about this show, this one.
Oh, right. Maybe, yeah. Maybe this has its roots in YIZO. Yeah. Anyway, so I said, yeah, let's do that. So we started writing this film we wrote this film called Street Bash, which I still think is a really great script. But it was in the moment that South Africa had embraced the sort of rainbow nation, and there were all those ads of white people and black people together, and which felt all very unreal to us.
Yeah.
And so this was a real kind of kick in the pants to the rainbow nation. It was a very tough, it was funny, but it was tough, and it was pretty brutal.
So you shot the movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
So this is the script. We almost shot that movie. But anyway, when we had finished writing the script, I thought, well, I better show it to Isaac, who was the man who had paid for all of this. So I took it to Isaac, and he said, I'll read it on the weekend. On Monday, I saw him. I said, how was it? And he just looked like bleak. So he said, I like to think of myself as associating with things that build.
Yeah, the nation.
And he said, I could not see a single thing in this thing that builds.
Yeah. So
I felt, shit, okay.
Oh, man.
I felt really guilty. I thought, oh, God, he spent all this money. And we've made this,
So he was like, it's trash.
He made this script that... So Tebogo and I were feeling like, shit, this is bad.
Yeah.
And then Isaac came to us and he said, look, there's this educational, brief that's out. Why don't you, instead of doing like this film, why don't you do something that's like constructive and gives back? And so we said, okay, we said, we'll pitch on the educational thing. Because at the time, we just wanted to do features. We didn't want to do television. And so we pitched, and then we wrote, and this was YIZO.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Yeah. So, and not one of us in the writing room had ever done television before.
Wow.
Yeah. We had never written television scripts. We'd never, it was like we were beginners. So yeah, that was...
Do you know how impactful that show was, man? I mean, the first episode came out, I think, in 1999. It's now 2023, and I've yet, apart from Shaka maybe, seen a better production. Like the impact of that show. So...
Bruh.
Hey?
Nuts. Like, what inspired that thing?
Yeah, that thing was insane, man.
Yeah, did you see something abroad? Like, because it reminds me almost
of
how
City
gritty
of God.
Yeah, how gritty it is. City of God.
It was before City of God.
Yeah.
Okay?
Was it before?
It was before City of God. So, Street Bash, would have been City of God.
Wow.
But I mean, everybody said, no, it's too bleak, it's too dark, it's too violent, it's like, So then I think a lot of the energy that had gone into Street Bash went into YIZO. And we were like, oh, we don't really want to do television. So our principle was we're going to take chances all the way through. We're going to experiment. We're going to explore. And also the principle was much rather fail than do something lame, So that was kind of the principle. And when we were shooting, in fact, this very sadly went to Philip Hloppe's funeral this weekend. And he was our first AD. And he was like really experienced. He'd been on a lot of, TV2 productions and stuff. And he and I butted heads. We were like, he was very loud. He was very in control. And he thought me and Tebogo were off our heads. He thought, and I know it would be like on the way, in the bus on the way to set in Davidson, he would say to these guys, "Woo, these, they don't know what they're doing."
They go crazy, yeah.
Anyway, by the end of the shoot, we had become firm friends. And then we carried on, we worked together through the years. But a lot of the crew, they'd say, "No, you can't say this, you can't say that." I'd say, "Well, you can say shit in English, right?"
Yeah.
And they say, "No, not in Zulu."
Yeah, not in Zulu. It's different, yeah.
It's different, yeah. And then we kind of ignored them. And the thing was, in that moment, it was a very important thing, the SABC was like an open, the old government was gone.
Yeah.
And the ANC hadn't sort of pricked up its ears and thought, we better take control of this thing.
Oh,
so
SABC.
It was in the space in between. And so there was real freedom. And it was like the golden era of television in South Africa.
Yeah, because you haven't seen anything like that since.
Yeah. And in fact, Thabo Mbeki, who I knew in exile, watched YIZO. And I think he thought, I'm going to kill this. There's going to be no more television like this. And he really worked to end our companies. I can't blame him. I can't say him.
Yeah, but
there was, he appointed a board, and then they sent in, we were investigated, and, there was a whole effort to kind of kill the companies that had come out of the sort of the liberal filmmaking space of the 80s. So it was Oka Films and Curious Pictures at the time, and Bomb were the targets. And anyway, we all managed to survive it.
What kind of backlash did you receive apart from the one you're telling us about now with Mbeki?
With YIZO?
Yeah, with YIZO.
Well, as many people hated it as loved it.
Sure.
Which was fantastic because, it felt like people were talking about it,
Because I remember it was radio, parents were complaining.
Yeah.
Bro.
And, I remember walking into school and a teacher shouting at me and saying, "Our school's like this because of you," kind of thing. It was like, and in fact, everything we had done was like based on anecdote. We had spent a whole year researching on schools. And we had this room in a basement. We had the basement in Isaac's building. And we had these walls, and we would come up with like, I was at this school and there was this kid called Papa Action who terrorized everybody. So we put Papa Action on a card.
Wow, so Papa Action was a real
character.
Someone who existed.
Yeah, so we had Papa Action, and then we said, what's a name to go with it? I don't know how we landed with Chester, but Chester came, So it was like all these little anecdotes on the wall that turned into those scripts. Wow. I don't know why I was telling you that.
Damn, man. Speaking about Papa Action, why did he leave? Why did you change him to Zola 7?
From Ronnie Nyakale, yeah.
It's a long story. Do you want a long story?
We got a podcast.
Yeah,
man. That's what we're here for.
So, well, first of all, when we cast, Tebogo and I cast YIZO together. And in fact, we saw hundreds of people.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember on the first day, we saw nobody that we liked other than Standiwe Goroge, who played the young teacher, if you recall.
Okay.
Yes, I remember.
Anyway, so we cast her. And then, it took ages to cast this thing. And we were looking for Papa Action in Chester, and we went to Piri. And in Piri, we went to this kind of informal school, drama school, and we did auditions there. And Ronnie and Ernest were like astonishing because Tebogo was reading the other side. And I remember we had this scene where basically Papa Action forces the other guy to suck on this gun and to masturbate, basically, or whatever. And so this is our audition scene.
That's wild, man.
And Tebogo was the poor victim. Like he was, and Ronnie and Ernest, my God, they were like, they went for this. And so we thought, okay, these are the guys. So we took pictures and we went back to the production house and we said, no, we found Papa Action in Chester. So the people looked at the two of them and said, what?
Who are these guys?
No, they're not good looking. And it's like, well, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Anyway, I remember we stuck with our guns. And when the wardrobe call happened, those guys put on their wardrobe and they were like, it was like they completely inhabited those characters. And I mean, the first season of YIZO was like improvisation city. Like, in fact, Papa Action hardly any lines. He was like, it was all Chester and Papa Action was the sidekick kind of thing. Gunman had no lines whatsoever. Like, it was like, and these actors would just come to the table and improvise and play around. And in fact, so then what I noticed that when on the call sheet it was Papa Action and Chester, the production people would always come out then to visit Seth and Davidson, because everybody just wanted to watch them.
Wow.
And, the truth was it had not been our intention to, they were supposed to be subsidiary characters. I mean, they were the gangsters. They weren't supposed to be the main characters. They were supposed to be Jarvis and Teaser, and, they were supposed to be the main characters. And I remember I did a documentary straight afterwards, and I traveled around the country, and I could see this graffiti all across rural areas and everywhere with like YIZO and Papa Action and Chester and everything. Yeah. So we felt a little bit responsible for having created kind of monsters, So, and in fact, on the night of the launch, we had a launch at a place in Newtown, which was then called Mega Music. And we had done a cut down of the series. And this launch was completely wild. And Tebogo turned to me and he said, we've made a monster kind of thing, And I remember friends of mine came to me and said, this is really irresponsible television. And it was like, and there were a lot of people that felt that about YIZO. Anyway, Ronnie and Ernest were embraced by every gangster in town. They sort of thought they were fantastic and that everybody loved them. But it was a different time, and there was no ways for them to make money. It wasn't like now you get endorsements and sort of things.
Yes.
And so they'd earned this like measly, actor's salary, and
but they
were beginners,
and
they're superstars, and they can't afford. They can barely afford taxi fare.
Yeah,
jeez.
So it was kind of a bit of a crisis for them. And when we did YIZO 2, I remember Ronnie and Ernest and Christopher, who was gunman, came to me and said, we're not doing YIZO 2 unless it pays us enough to buy us houses in the suburbs. And I said, Ronnie, if we pay you 3 times more, it's still not going to buy you a house in the suburbs. And they stuck to their guns. And then so it was very important for me that they play those roles in the second season, because there was redemption for the characters. And I wanted, because they so identified with the characters, I wanted to take them on the journey
Of
to redemption. And I said to Ronnie, come on, it's like, it will take you to a space that is a safe space in a way. And he said, no, not going to do it, not going to do it. So we started shooting, and then I gave up. And I started looking, and I saw Zola, and he had a scar on his face quite similar to the one that we stuck on Ronnie.
On Ronnie.
And he had these beautiful long dreadlocks. And I said to him, would you be prepared to chop off your dreadlocks? And I remember I took him to the place in Yeovil and he cut them off. Felt badly. And people had said to me, everybody in Durban calls crocodile Chester. So Dumasani, that had played crocodile in Serafina, they were basically saying they're lookalikes. So I thought, okay, I have no choice here. I'm going to go with lookalikes. So I called Dumasani to come up. And we did our first day. I remember it was at the court, and I got a call. And you can imagine how excited Zola and Dumasani were, because, now everybody knew about YIZO, and it was like they were great roles to land. And it was Ronnie, and he said, we've thought about it. No, it was terrible. And I felt terrible because I so wanted Ronnie to do it. He was such a brilliant actor. Same with Ernest. They're both genius actors. I said, I can't do that now to these people. It's too late.
Yes.
Oh.
And the terrible irony is that role, basically Zola took that role and he got a house in the suburbs. It was like, you know what I mean? It was like, yeah. So that was, it was an incredible thing. And, anyway, Ronnie and Ernest did genius work in that first season.
Why did it end, YIZO? Why did you only get 2 seasons?
Well, no, it had 3 seasons.
3 seasons, yeah.
I only wanted to do 1. And the SABC, because I sort of think I didn't like repeating.
For sure.
And the SABC said, no, come on, you got to do a second one, And so we did a second one, and then I said, no, we're definitely not doing a third one.
The third one, yeah.
And they said, no, you got to do a third one, I said, well, our characters were in matric, they've left school. And then I said, okay, I'll do a third one, because I love inner city Joburg. So I said, if we can shoot it in the city, and we can talk about xenophobia.
I get you.
Oh, wow.
And so we in that third season, we spoke about xenophobia and sexuality, which were both pretty unpopular subjects.
At the time,
yeah. But I could feel the xenophobic thing coming, and I wanted us to start addressing it. So that was the deal. And yeah, I love the third season as well.
And the Netflix deal, because I see it's on Netflix now. How does that work?
Nothing to do with us. I mean, it's like,
for real?
No, we don't own that show. It's,
my goodness.
Yeah, no.
So all the money, obviously Netflix paid. Who owns it? SABC?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So no. I mean, so that's the problem, is pretty much all the work that we've done, we don't own.
Gee, that's insane.
So it's kind of the problem with the industry. So you think, like Jacob's Cross, for example, which was this sort of Nigerian, South African show, plays in every place where there are Nigerian people, that show plays. So it's been sold across the world everywhere.
Zone 14.
But we've earned not a cent off that. And that's, and it needs government intervention, and the government has never really intervened. Because in most parts of the world, the the creator will own a chunk of the product, but not so here.
How did the Generations guy get it right? What's his name?
Mfundi. So he didn't.
Okay.
So in fact, Mfundi very bravely took them on with, he did the show for E, which was about their drama school. He started in Cape Town.
Backstage.
Backstage.
That's right.
Yeah.
So he did the first season, and when they negotiated the second season, they could not come to an agreement. So he said, I'm going to take it away. And they said, basically, no, you don't. It belongs to us.
Oh.
I mean, I stand to be corrected, but that was kind of what the argument was. And Mfundi at that stage had done very well in Generations and was able to get lawyers in to take up the case. And he lost the case. He won the case. So in fact, we still, to date, are not in a place where we own our content.
Whoa. You got another Zola 7 story? Because that's my guy, man.
Okay, so Zola came onto YIZO 2. And the minute he was on YIZO 2, he was like on me.
Yeah.
Like, he would if he was not shooting, he would sort of come and stand next to me and he says, I can rap, I can do this, I've got these stories, I want to do this television show. And I think, oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
So eventually I said to him, look, we have this relationship with Ghetto Rough. I can take you into the studio. So I took him and Christopher, who's Gunman, right?
Yeah.
Into the studio. And we met with KB, who's not the KB, he was the producer KB.
Yeah.
And KB had the bed or, the beats for iLembe.
Wow.
Ready, there. And Zola walked up to that mic and was like, oh my God, this guy was incredible.
Yeah.
It was completely clear that this guy was a huge talent. And Christopher was fine, but he was not
Zola
anywhere
7,
what Zola was. And so then we did Ghetto Fabulous, which was a great song. And he, with KG. Anyway, with him, same producer. KB, yeah. Who was incredibly talented. And then he did his album, but before the album came out, a friend of mine at SABC said, I'm looking for a talk show host. And I said to him, I know the guy, but don't use him. Because I said, I know what will happen. He'll become a celebrity, and that's a useless thing. That's what I said.
True.
I said, and he's a genius. He's like a brilliant guy. And, he should be in the writing room. He should be creating stuff. And of course, I had my own selfish things. I thought, YIZO 3 comes, Zola's going to be in the writing room. You know? Anyway, my friend ignored me and contacted Zola, and of course, Zola. And so I called Zola and I said to him, don't do it. I said, you'll become a useless celebrity. And he said to me, the day that we finished shooting, and I went back home and I put my head down on the pillow and I thought, I'm not going to get up tomorrow to do something. He said, I cannot tell you the fear that filled me. And boy, did I hear him, because it was like, he spoke directly. I have the spoiled experience. He's had the experience of a tough life. And some years before YIZO of just, as he said, sitting on the pavement kind of thing. And so I backed down from my position. And then of course, he did incredible things. I was completely wrong. He was right. And he did extraordinary things with, his reality shows. So yeah, that's.
So are you telling me? I always had the impression that the TV show, the brand Zola, the music, it was all Lance Stir. Didn't you have that feeling as well?
Yeah. I thought. I mean, his name would be in the conversations.
So what had happened in YIZO 1 was we had used Tupac and all sorts of things in the rough cut.
Yes.
And we said, well, we can't use this in the. Yeah. So I don't know. We somehow connected with Lance, and Lance said, we said we need songs, and so Lance said, I'll bring some musicians, and you can show us some stuff. So Lance brought Ishmael and a bunch of musicians in, and they were the first people that ever watched YIZO. So they watched. I remember they sat at a table and they watched 3 episodes. And at the end of it, there was this silence. And then they said, it's the bomb.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, that's where our name comes from.
Whoa.
Is that moment. And so then they made music for the series. So
it just became a relationship.
Yeah. The hip hop and all of it, Ishmael, that relationship was formed. And then in the second season, I wanted to work with other musicians. Like Mendoza was out there. And so I said to Lawrence, can't we do a combination of Ghetto Rough and EMI? Which we did, and which didn't make Lawrence happy. But anyway, I mean, I had taken Zola to Lance's studio.
Got you.
And so they formed a relationship. And so that first album came out of that studio.
So according to you personally, I mean, having been in this business for so long as Mr. Angus Gibson, what do you think the solve is? What can the government do, or what can...
Well, I do believe that the creative just should have some form of ownership of, not everything, but some significant ownership in the things that we make. But now it feels like, so I tell you what has happened recently is previously with the BBC and, all of those kind of institutions, there would be this split.
Yeah.
But now with the streamers, they seem to have learned from the South Africa. And so Netflix takes hold of it pretty much. People that work for Netflix here don't own any of that.
It's a Netflix original.
So those streamers are behaving badly as well, which I think is partly to do with what this writer's strike is about. So I stand to be corrected. The feeling at the moment is the best thing to do is if you had the capital to make your own material and then sell it on, that would be the thing to do. But then you've got to have the capital.
So in an ideal world, you have the capital, means ownership.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yeah. So you sell broadcast rights. And then
like in music.
And 5 years later, you still own it and you can resell it. It's like a
beautiful.
It's like a whole.
So why didn't you do that with Shaka then?
Well, Shaka was a thing that was initiated by Mnet. So it has a bit of a story, which was, I suppose the principle with Bomb is that we always think we don't want to repeat ourselves. Sure. We want to do something that's different.
Innovative.
And literally, it must be 8 years ago, he said, what will be fresh is if we do stories that are pre-colonial. So before there were settlers or anything. Because narratives that come out of Africa are invariably stories about struggles against settlers.
Yes.
So to represent a community in its full beauty before there was this other thing.
Contamination.
So, yeah.
Yeah, just for lack of a better word.
Yeah, sure. So anyway, And we had this idea of, let's partner with all the provinces. So we'll do, in the Eastern Cape, we'd do a project there. With MacG, we'd do a project there. Mushesh, like the whole different ones with different spaces. And in fact, I knew through Isibaya, I knew a lot of taxi owners and people with clout.
Yeah.
And so they organized me a meeting with Zuma at the time.
Yeah.
And I said to him, hey, this is my idea. And he said, no, it seems like a good idea. But it was just before his second term. And he said, I could tell you to go to my culture people. He said, but they're going to look at you and they're going to say, yeah. He says, but all they're thinking about is, will I still have my job in the second term?
Yeah, that's all.
So he says, no, you come next time round kind of thing.
When I win again.
Yeah, when I win again, which I didn't do. Anyway, so my partner Desiree, who had really kind of pulled together this proposal, went to Mnet and said, we're interested in doing this thing. And Yolisa at Mnet was completely enthralled by
your proposal.
By the proposal. But they put it out as a brief to, the idea of doing pre-colonial narratives to South Africa generally. Maybe they'd been told they had to do that rather than give us but we thought, to hell, this was our idea.
Yeah.
So we didn't pitch. And anyway, so we weren't part of that. And then afterwards, Yolisa came back to us and said, please do, won't you pitch to do Shaka Zulu?
Wait, so that idea before Shaka, they took it away from you guys?
Well, they didn't take it away, but they sort of made it public. So that felt like, it felt a little off. But anyway, I'm sure it was done with good intent. But anyway, we were a little pissed, and so we didn't pitch. But and the thing with that whole series, the idea was to do small characters, unknown characters that people didn't know about. And Shaka was the opposite of that. Like Shaka, so much has been written.
Yeah, so much.
Everybody feels very passionately about this guy. It's like, So I sort of thought, oh boy, this is digging a hole for ourselves. Because my feeling was, no matter what you do, there will be naysayers.
Of course.
And so anyway, I thought, okay, so we did our usual thing, which was research, and we spent at least 5 years on research.
Wow.
Because there was the whole COVID thing, and and trying to raise money.
What do you mean by research? Like, is this you guys just going on Google?
No. So it was like, it was going to the praises. It was going to oral history. It was going to every historian we could imagine. So like Zulu historians, international Zulu historians, white South African Zulu historians, so like every, because they all have perspectives.
Yeah.
So what we were saying is we want to understand every version of the story. And then we'll navigate our way through these versions.
Which version which version took you by surprise? Like one that had been documented?
Well, I suppose it's very evident in the series. So when we started doing research around Shaka, suddenly it was like, but Dingiswayo is such a great character. And what about Ntumbazi? Isn't she great? And Mkabaya is such a incredible, so it immediately broadened the world. So, and then, we also didn't want to repeat what everybody else had done. So
Dingiswayo, that really happened?
Yeah.
Jeez, man.
The name Dingiswayo means the banished one. Like,
the exiled
it's
one.
The exiled one,
yeah.
rather. Yeah, it's
it's
a person, yeah.
So he was Gorongwana, right? And then when so in fact, I went to this guy called BV Mtetwa, who was the head of the Mtetwas at the time. And I said to him, is it true that Jobe killed all his sons? And BV said, yes, that's true. So we thought, okay, we're taking it from Vivi, you know. Anyway,
That's wild, man.
yeah. So Golongwana went into exile. So here's a case in point. There's hardly anything written about him in exile. So some people said, oh, he went to the Eastern Cape, and in fact, he saw the frontier wars there, and et cetera, et cetera. We knew that he had been to the Hlubi up in the mountains. There was this legend that he had returned on a horse, and there was this other legend that he had met this doctor called Cowan, and the horse had come from Cowan. So we had these bits and pieces, but we also knew that he had formed a relationship with the Mabudu, who were the big traders down near Delagoa Bay in Mozambique. And we decided that was the story we wanted to tell. And we were interested in some kind of there being the White Walkers in a way.
Yes.
And we felt like the White Walkers were kind of represented by the slavers and the slave trade and those ships that were on the sea. So after years of debate as to whether we should or should not include any reference to the slave trade, we did include it.
Nice touch, by the way. That was very nice.
Well, thank you. And I kind of, I think people on the whole have embraced what we did there, but it was, we argued about it in the room.
What was the argument about?
Well, the argument was, there's no evidence that Nguni people were involved in the slave trade. And are you suggesting here that they were involved? Then other people say, actually, if you read these files from the American whalers, in fact, Nguni people were involved. So it's like, it was backwards and forwards like this. And also, my sense is, my gut is the black audience is not in love with watching people enslaved. It's like, 12 years a slave is not top of the pops. It's like...
Yeah. It's been overdone. It's been overdone, yeah.
And it kind of... So it was quite important for us that it almost play in one episode and that the victory over the slavers happens
for me,
in one
what
episode.
resonated is... And I think it's a side that you guys showed that I haven't seen, is that our people were also selling our people.
Well, I mean, look, that was how it operated across Africa, right?
Yeah.
So, it was, anyway, so that, I don't know how we got there. So what it was you asked me, what did the research reveal?
Yes.
And I said it revealed a broader world that was really interesting and that people had not spoken about. Like, I mean, nobody's made a film about the Ndwandwe. And look how great, those characters
so much
are,
history,
And nobody's made a film about the Mtetwa that I'm aware of. So, now...
And there's more layers.
Even if we got it wrong... We tried to get it right, and it's like there is a representation out there now that people can imagine. They can say,
if we're in America...
I have an imagination over the Mtetwa now.
If we're in America, we'd have so many spin-offs, eh?
Bro, plenty. Speaking of the Ndwandwes and Mtetwas, I saw an article saying some descendants of some of the characters in Shaka iLembe weren't happy with how their ancestors were represented. I'm not sure which characters, it may be Nandi or so, but some family members weren't happy. How are you guys navigating that?
So, in fact, I mean, that's an ongoing conversation. And in fact, I mean, literally today, I had a SMS conversation with one of the Ndwandwe people who is very caught up in the Ndwandwe history and I think feels kind of upset that that we didn't, that he too was not consulted. And I kind of feel like that across the board is the case. But it sort of certainly did not come from lack of trying. So, we tried to speak to as many people as possible over the period. And of course, what we soon discovered was that there are different versions of every story.
Of course.
So the easiest thing to tell you is, so there's a whole school of thought that believes that Shaka was born in 1781, and there's a school of thought that believes he was born in 1787.
Yeah.
Now, we don't know which one is right. But it was better for us to go with 1787 because it meant that the character's going to be 41 when he dies.
Yeah.
And so it's better for us. So we made that choice.
And I heard that the first one, right, was more about Shaka, but you guys wanted to do this one more about Nandi to show the sacrifice that she...
Yeah. So the first season, I mean, the main characters really are Nandi, Gorongwana,
And Jon Snow.
Zwide,
The Black Jon Snow.
and then this little guy that's growing up.
Yeah.
So Nandi in a way is like, is the lead character.
Yeah.
How's she involved, Nomzamo?
Well, we've known her since the beginning of Isibaya. So, she started out with us, and then over a 10-year period, she became kind of very much part of the Bomb family.
Okay. Is that why she's a producer now?
She's an executive producer with us.
I get it.
And we have a number of people that are vital informants for us. So, they come from different places and different positions. Some of them completely disagree with each other. And then we kind of negotiate the space in between. And Nomzamo is one of those important voices.
I won't lie to you, I was shocked that she went topless. Because she's like a big star, you know what I mean?
So, that was a 3-year debate.
Whoa.
So it was like, do we go topless or don't we go topless? And there was a very strong lobby which I kind of agreed with, is if we are saying we want to be authentic, then it's got to be topless.
Yeah.
And the real test was a year before when we started, or maybe even more than a year before, we started doing auditions and that kind of thing. We would ask every Zulu woman, what do you feel? Do you feel that you should go topless or not? And across the board, I can't think of anybody that said, we shouldn't go topless.
Wow. So the consensus was
So
yes.
the consensus from Zulu women was we should be represented topless.
Wow.
And our position was, that's great, but if you change your mind, if you feel uncomfortable,
at any
then
point, yes.
don't hesitate. We'll find another mode, for each individual.
So how was
that
the first scene?
I think the first scene is the bees.
Yeah, I'm saying where they are topless, like the ones that you're shooting. I'm sure it must have been like.
So we did all the auditions topless, right?
Okay.
And we had done we did a promo shoot topless as well.
So you're used to it now.
So it was interesting. Shoots are spaces in which inappropriate behavior often emerges, right? And we thought, well, Shaka, this set is where men and women seem to be virtually naked, seem to be like a space for that kind of problem. And it so was not. In the entire long, hard shoot, there was never, ever an issue.
How long did you guys shoot for?
It was about 5 months.
5 months, okay.
And it was through winter.
Yeah.
It was tough. tough for me in my big jacket and a whole lot tougher for everybody else. Yeah.
I must say, I was really disappointed when the first season came to an end. And after I heard all this amount of money you guys spent on, how come you just shot season 1 only? Like, do you guys have a doubt that this thing could end up as a flop?
Sure. I mean, of course it could be a flop.
No ways.
Why? I
What?
mean, no, the audience has to make the judgment.
Okay.
You know, I mean, it's like, no, I was nervous all the way through the season.
Wow.
Like I thought, okay, the first episode, how will the second episode go?
Yeah.
I thought, okay, now Lemo's coming. Are they going to love Lemo? Are they going to hate Lemo? You know, it's like,
no, man.
So, no, that was like,
Angus, that was a
tension.
masterpiece.
Yeah.
tension all the way.
Oh,
We thought they'd shot
masterpiece,
like
man.
4 seasons already.
Bro, that thing is amazing.
Anyway, so the point is that we can't do it without the money, right? So I suppose I have to give you some context.
And I heard you guys were burning like 2 million rands a day.
Yeah, so like a reshoot was a big expense. But I mean, the point is that, okay, you have to look at the context of 200 million rand, okay? And the only context you can have is a project on a similar scale. So at the same, just when we finished, the American show started in South Africa as well, using a lot of our crew, right?
Which American show?
Oh, you didn't know? There was an American Shaka.
No ways.
Oh, come on.
For real?
You didn't know?
No, which one? Do you know about it?
No, I don't know an American
Oh,
Shaka.
come on.
I don't know an American Shaka.
Anton Fuqua, you know who he is?
Anton Fuqua, yeah, the guy who made Training Day.
Training Day, exactly. And CBS decided to do a Shaka in South Africa after we had decided to do
Wow.
ours.
It's not out yet?
So they start just after us. They have 3 crews operating. They shoot for 6 months. And an accountant that worked with us worked on it. And 1 week before or 2 weeks before the end of their 6-month shoot, CBS Showtime pulled the plug on the show.
Okay.
Whoa.
Now, I don't know why they pulled the plug.
Yeah. Yours is too good.
It was being done in English.
Yeah.
You know, like Shaka was played by a British actor.
No way.
And Nandi was Nandi was being played by a French actor.
Oh,
goodness.
No ways. What is
So,
this?
so anyway, the accountant came to me and said, "Do you know that in South Africa, this is not their pre-production or post-production budget. They had already spent 800 million rand." Okay. So I'm just saying,
context.
in that context, 200 million
This is peanuts.
was tough. I mean, and when we started out, they said, "Do what you want to do." So in fact, the very first scene that we wrote was an elephant hunt. But nowadays, you can't hurt an animal, and so those elephants had to be CGI. And then the battle became about whether we could shoot it in Zulu. And there was this thing of, well, if you shoot in Zulu, you can't have a big budget. So then we understood, we started paring the budget down. And eventually it was Mnet that were prepared to put up entirely the 200 million, make the gamble on a Zulu product. So nobody's ever done anything similar to that. So they were being courageous in that moment. So 200 million, I know it is a fortune, but in the context
of
that
filmmaking.
scale, it's not. So then, the elephant hunt went out, and, it was like, we scaled down, there was Delagoa Bay originally with scenes on a ship and but that all went away. I mean, believe it or not, 200 million was a lean budget.
How amazing was Shaka, man?
Wasn't he?
I'm asking you, how amazing was he?
Do you mean the character? Or?
Yeah.
Well, I think he is an extraordinary character, and I think a really complex character. I mean, I think, with real intelligence. I mean, I think that's the first. he's like a complete innovator. And then this darkness. I mean, he's got a whole range of things going on. And I suppose that was why I felt that Lemogang would be a good actor to play the part, because he'd grown up in Mpangeni, so he had a strong sense of the Zulu world. And I had seen him both as a very warm character, and as this incredibly dark character. He had played a very dark character for me in a project that I did. And so it was important for me that the actor have the range that I feel that Shaka has. He's one of the great characters to tell a story about, because he is so complex.
We had Nkosi and Wiseman on the podcast a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they were telling us that on the set of Shaka, sometimes like there would be amadlozi, like...
yeah, completely.
For real?
Yeah. Quite often, people would be kind of possessed. And we'd have to stop the shoot and kind of engage the person. And we had people on the set that were able to bring them sort of slowly out of that possession. And we had Glozium Leche, the praise singer for the previous king and the present king, was sort of quite present quite often on our set, and would go to each location and would bless the location. Kind of, we would communicate with the ancestors and say, "This is what we're doing here."
Okay.
And the thing that made that show stand apart was that it felt like everybody was invested in the project. Like, you had Nkosi and Wiseman, they were astonishing. They were just every day watching them was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And many others.
Yes.
It felt like everybody was completely committed. And I mean, if you know how terrible some of those night shoots were.
What's that lady, man? The lady...
In Tombazi.
What's her name? The real...
Kabonina.
You!
Yeah, Kabonina.
Woo!
So Kabonina...
Yeah.
So I've never worked with Kabonina before, and I didn't do her audition. Somebody that, we had a whole department of people doing auditions. And they brought me the first batch of auditions, and I looked through, and I saw Kabonina, and I said, "That's in Tombazi." And she was made
amazing,
for that role,
man.
I mean, I suppose, certain people are made for certain roles. Like, I feel that Siyabonga Twala was made for Impiaki. I mean, Impiaki and him, you can't separate those two characters. And anyway, so Kabonina was literally, I mean, there were people that in my head I had cast beforehand.
Yeah.
But I was open. I was thinking, if somebody better comes along, well, sure. But in terms of people that came to audition, Kabonina was the first person that got a job.
Yeah, no, she was amazing, man.
Who else that's famous had auditioned for Shaka? Is there anyone?
Who didn't?
Who didn't?
Why didn't you two come?
We should have come.
Yeah.
No, I mean the role of Shaka, the actual role of Shaka.
Well, we auditioned everybody you see quite often with a speech that was ostensibly Shaka's speech. So, for example, we had seen Wiseman as Shaka. We had seen everybody.
Yeah, Nkosi.
We'd seen them all. But, then you have to think, well...
Kwenzi Ngobo. Did you audition for?
Kwenza, definitely. And then it was like, So it was then the dynamics between the characters. And I mean, the weird thing is that, like Nkosi is younger than Lemogang.
Yeah.
But he completely pulls off the older mentor.
Yes.
He is so able to pull that off.
Yeah, Nkosi is young, eh?
Yeah.
He's a youngster.
He's 28, I think.
Yeah, 28, yeah.
So
Lebogang is older.
he's 32.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And the thing with Lebogang was
Lebogang is Shaka, by the way, for those who don't know.
Yeah. So I wanted an actor that could go from 18 to his death. So it would be one person in the arc, as opposed to breaking it up.
Yeah.
And I felt like Lebogang could play young and play old. And so Lemo, in order to play the 18-year-old, had to starve himself. Like he lost
some
a
weight.
huge amount of weight. And so he was this skinny guy on set. You know, everybody else was sort of buff and and he was like this skinny guy. And then there was a point at which he had to quickly put on muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, there was a 3-week gap.
Jeez.
And we had these trainers and everybody, and he had to eat. It was, and you can sort of tell in the beginning, the first shoots, and he carried on sort of putting on muscle.
And the costumes, that must have been crazy, eh?
Well, the costumes and makeup, the point is that this project is made by many people, many, many people. And the costume department were a genius. I mean, Shelley Masondo was like, she's a genius. And it was the perfect fit. It was like Tim Nkosi with Godongwana. It was like, Kabonina with Shelley, and this project as just the
Do you think
perfect
it's
fit.
your best work yet?
My best work? Other people tell me it is.
Yeah, it's gotta be, bro.
Yeah.
Bro, you have no idea. And I understand because you're part of it, so you can't see what we see. But like, yeah.
I do. There are some documentaries I made that I really love. And I love YIZO 1. I kind of do think it's got a kind of an energy that I will always love. But I do love this series as well. And I'm pleased that other people love it as well. I sort of had expected that it would be like YIZO and there'd be half the country hating it and half the country loving it. But people have been very kind.
Were you still working with Tebogo?
Yeah.
Were you still working with him on Shaka, iLembe?
Before he passed away.
Yeah, he passed away, I know.
Yeah.
But in the production, though, you guys were still tight as far as professionally?
Well, we've been partners for 30 years.
Okay.
So, in fact, we'd worked together in the beginning a lot, and then he had moved into the commercials department at BOM, and I had stayed with Longform. And then he decided that he wanted to shift into Longform again. So we said, well, come onto Shaka. So in fact, we did recce's together, and so in the very beginning, in our interviews we traveled around speaking to family representatives and that kind of thing, and we did that together. And then he had a meeting with myself and Desiree, and he said, I know what this project is going to be. It's going to be a big collaboration. It's going to be many voices. And I want to do absolutely personal work in this moment. And so we said, okay. He said, I have projects that I feel I want to go with. And I think this is going to get in the way of those. So he, I'm trying to think. It was probably more than a year before we started shooting. And so he went off to develop, sort of took a sabbatical to develop those projects. And then tragically, those didn't come to pass because he passed away. That was, he was there in the very beginning.
Yeah. I've always wanted to know, man, how do you navigate between like your creative vision and the commercial success? Because yes, as much as we love what you do and you love what you do, at the end of the day, you still got to make money for whether it's Mnet or Isaac. Is it Isaac was funny in the beginning? Or whoever it is,
Yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I suppose I've always wanted an audience. So my experience in the 80s was that I made these documentaries, and then I'd quite often go overseas to edit them. So I'd edit them in London or New York or whatever, and then they'd be shown overseas. And so, like, I had no sense of an audience, you know, I had like no sense of people watching what I was doing. So, and I wanted, you know, I wanted to be able to have a dialogue, you know, with South Africa, I suppose. And so when YIZO happened, which was the first kind of project post that period, I didn't care whether people hated it or loved it. Just the fact that people were watching it was like such a pleasure.
Wow.
And I suppose I don't think of myself as a great auteur. I don't think I'm, you know, Federico Fellini or, you know, whatever.
That's insane.
I am like, I work with people. And what often is attributed to me, truthfully, belongs to somebody else. You know, it's like people coming together to make something. And I suppose that's what I love about the process is the people around me and making it.
What is that process? Your process? Well, like, how do you approach like storytelling?
Well, I suppose first with looking at the real world and finding narratives in the real world.
So you'd have a field day right now because there's so much happening.
Boy, yeah. And I'm stuck in this 18th century. Yeah. I should be right here. Yeah, no, you're right. But it is about collaboration. You know, I sort of, you know, so for example, Tebogo Mahlatsi is a case in point. I met him and he was this kid from Kroonstad and, you know, he had no opportunity to see movies, but like he had read everything he could about movies. He had like, you know, he had, the thing that always stood out for me, there was this very obscure film made by this quite obscure French filmmaker. And she had like these weird shadows in it. And he said, oh, you know, I was really interested by the shadows in Last Year of Marienbad. And I thought, this is a kid from Kroonstad, right? And the point was he was passionate. And he had all these ideas. And I immediately thought, this is a person I want to work with. So when I came back from New York, we immediately got together and we started working. And the relationships have developed like that. My relationship with Desiree Markgraf was like Tebogo and I wrote the scripts. Then we had to pitch to do the production. Yeah. We got the production and we thought, well, we don't know how to do this. And I went to Muneen Lee, who was this very fantastic agent that was a friend of mine. And I said, who are we going to get to be the producer? And she said, speak to my friend Desiree. So we met with Desiree, who was this sort of wild, quite fabulous character. Okay, let's do it together. And I think she was suitably terrified. She thought, these two documentary makers, first of all, there are going to be two directors. Anyway, she was brave enough to take us on. And out of that came Bomb, basically.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah.
I got some quick fire questions I want to ask you, yeah? Top 3 movies of all time.
It's a very... So I tell you, I say the same thing every time. Yeah. And maybe I'm going to change a bit. But I say Chinatown, and you won't know what Chinatown is. Nope. It's a 1970s movie.
Okay, I'll stream it.
I say Godfather.
First one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in fact, I love Godfather 2. So I'm going to say Godfather 1 and 2.
Okay.
Okay? 3.
By the way, what is it about Godfather, man? Is it the way it's shot? Is it the storyline?
it's that sense. It's that sense of family. It's like, and I also think like,
to be honest, I've tried to watch it.
If you were like 16,
yeah,
when it came out, as I was, it made like such a deep impression. So I saw Chinatown when I was 18, and I do think there's a period in your life, in your late adolescence, your early 20s, where things stay with you. So like books I read in that moment have like stuck with me.
Oh, makes sense.
And it's movies as well. So of course I love those 70s movies, which were very kind of out there kind of movies. I can't even say what the third film is. There's like 1,000 possibilities.
Yeah.
But I'll stick in the 70s and I'll say a movie which you haven't seen either, which is called Midnight Cowboy.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. So, and they're each quite different from each other. But I love, what are the most recent film I've seen that I love? I've just seen a Korean film that I love.
The Koreans are doing well.
Yeah. There's a South African filmmaker called Oliver Humanis that made a film in Britain based on a Japanese film that I think is incredible. I think he's a huge talent.
I'm loving even like European guys, because on Netflix, most of the European movies are really dope. Like Americans, I don't know what's happening there.
Well, I love American movies, but the
storylines have become predictable.
Oh, man. But Paul Thomas Anderson, like
what
those
movie
guys.
is that? What movie did he do?
You're challenging me here. Why do I have to? My memory. Paul Thomas Anderson. He made a film called Phantom Thread. Okay, you won't know it.
No.
Okay. He made a film called Boogie Nights about the porn industry. You haven't seen that?
Boogie Nights, I think I've seen.
Okay, it's a
Does
great
it have
film.
like, what's that male stripper?
Yes.
That vibe?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
No, but the guy that used to model Calvin Klein underwear is the lead in it.
Okay.
And he had a fake dick in it. Right?
Let me check. Boogie Nights.
Okay, so that...
Boogie Nights.
He did There Will Be Blood. Do you know There Will Be Blood?
Name sounds familiar. I've heard the name.
Okay.
Boogie Nights, 1997. Let's see, who's the actor? Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
yeah.
Don Cheadle, okay.
Yeah. Okay. But let me... So you in terms of... when we did YIZO, the filmmaker that both Tebogo and I were... The filmmakers that we were in love with was the Hong Kong filmmaker Wong Kar-wai, who did all of this sort of incredible... if you watch his movies, you will definitely see the influence in YIZO. And this Indian filmmaker called Satyajit Ray, that did these sort of very community-based, did this trilogy called The World of Apu. And I can remember... Tebogo being asked, like, who are your African influences? And he thought for a while, he said, well, actually it was Hong Kong and India. It was like, so.
Man, I like movies, when you get mind fucked, where you're like, it's
So what are your favorite movies?
There's this one, I forgot what it's called, right? But like, it's about, let me tell you the storyline. So it's about this guy, this other guy kills this other guy's daughter, right? So the father plans revenge for like the longest time, right? And then he traps this guy into like a house, and this guy is like trapped into this house.
For 20 years?
Yes.
Old Boy.
Is it Old Boy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. There's even two. There's a remake. Original is Korean.
It's Korean, and then Spike Lee made a remake.
Yes.
Spike Lee made a remake.
Old
Boy. Yeah.
That's crazy. And he ends up chowing his daughter.
Yeah, I've seen Old Boy.
Fucking hell.
Okay, there you go.
Shutter Island.
Okay.
Cool.
That's an interesting film.
Yeah, it is. I like that.
And
I didn't see that.
The Korean one is better than the American one, yeah.
Much better.
Yeah.
Top
but
three.
Do you like the British Office or do you like the American Office?
I like British Office. I like the British humor.
Good, I would agree.
Yeah. Who's this guy?
No, but hang on, I haven't watched the American Office, so maybe I can't make that claim, but yeah.
Yeah. But generally, I prefer British films. Yeah, they're really dope. Top three actors.
In the world?
Yeah.
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Who's that?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel Day.
God, man. You should know Daniel Day-Lewis.
Daniel
Huh?
Day-Lewis. It sounds familiar.
Probably
man.
knows the face.
Daniel Day. Oh, yes.
Okay, Jack Nicholson.
Jack. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm betraying my generation here. Again, number 3 is a problem for me.
He's 66 years old. Oh, that's why I don't know him.
Same age as me, right?
Do you know him, Zola? I haven't seen him, man.
Who's that?
Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yeah, doesn't he play thingy?
Thingy.
Nah.
He was.
I know Hey, man, he looks like the guy who plays.
He played
the
Lincoln.
Joker. It's not him?
Yes, he plays Lincoln.
He plays Lincoln.
Joker? No?
No. That guy died, man.
No, he was incredible.
Yeah. What's his name?
Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Heath Ledger.
he was incredible.
Was
So I
I've
have.
seen this guy before.
You've never seen him?
No, I've seen
you
him
have.
before.
Yeah,
I've seen him before.
he's a brilliant. He's kind of an actor's actor. So number 3 is Marlon Brando for me. Okay.
Marlon Brando.
Yeah. Okay. So he, in fact, is even older than me. So yeah.
He did Godfather.
Godfather. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I
another
prefer
film that I love, On the Waterfront. Maybe that's my number 3.
Is it?
Yeah.
And Scarface, I preferred Scarface better than Godfather.
I love Scarface.
But it's a copy.
That's not a copy. It's its own film, I think.
Oh, okay.
I love Scarface. Yeah. That scene with the chainsaw.
Yeah, it's
is
insane,
incredible.
right?
And the scene where she slaps his face after. Anyway, I love Scarface. Yeah.
Top 3 productions you wish you came up with.
Do you mean in the world?
No, let's do an essay.
It's difficult.
It's difficult, eh? Top 3 that you wish you did.
Ooh.
You had your name
I
there.
don't watch. So I was a big fan. There's an Afrikaans production made in the 80s that called
You lost me by Afrikaans.
Verspilde Lente that I admired a lot by this Afrikaans director called Mani van Rensburg, who was a brilliant director. And he committed suicide very sadly. Yeah. Then I was a big fan of the first season of Hostella.
Stella.
I really loved it. I didn't love the police arc in it, but I loved the series. Number 3.
Noisy Dingo.
Angus you're speaking to, man.
I'm trying to think.
Gazlam tried to do a YIZO.
Yeah, but
They tried to.
I did prefer YIZO.
Yeah. Remember Gazlam?
Didn't you guys do Gaslam?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
You can tell.
Nah.
Yeah. So we did YIZO and then Zone. I love Zone, right?
Zone 14.
But we were involved in Zone.
Yeah. Isibaya.
I love.
They did this.
They did
Yeah,
Ayeye
Isibaya.
as well. Ayeye.
I love
with
it.
Pops.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
Yeah. So this is a bit embarrassing. I think you're putting me on the spot.
Nah, don't stress about it. What do you feel about the emergence of social media? You know, there's people getting roles because they have a big following.
There are films that I like that are South African. So Knuckle City, for example, there's much about Knuckle City that I love.
Oh, yes.
You know, so there are things out there that I
like.
really did like. I really loved the film of Inamba Namba.
Inamba Namba, yes. I watched that recently. It's
I
quite
didn't.
dope.
No, but the original film.
Oh, the original one. Okay.
Yeah. So no, there are things I do like. Yeah.
Social media, what's your take?
I don't do it at all. In fact, we had a conversation today about it. So I'm kind of nervous of it. And my friend Kotlwano put me on Instagram, and there that day I put 2 pictures on, which is all that there is. There's just 2 pictures. And which I like. I like the pictures. And I think I've got like 4,000 followers or something. But like they've come like 1 a day or 2 a day, and I feel guilty each day. I think, shit, I'm not offering them anything. Like, you know, I'm sort of, they're coming to this thing and there's nothing happening. And for a while I thought, oh, when I do Shaka, then I'll post stuff.
Some stuff,
you know?
yeah.
but I didn't.
So you guys, you don't hire people because based on their following and how many followers they have and stuff?
I have nothing, like I'm so outside of all of that.
Gotcha.
And I'm not proud of myself for it. Like, you know, I'm not proud that I didn't know who you guys were. No, I think that's terrible.
No, it's good, it's fine.
Yeah.
Enough people know us already. The less the better.
Yeah. Anyway, now I do. Now I really do.
Couch casting. You've been in the game for a long time. Does that exist?
Not in the... So I've been in the game, but I've kind of done my own thing always. Like I've never been in a big company where I've been told, oh, will you do the auditions?
Gotcha.
I do the auditions for myself. So I have this thing of like, I'm interested in the person. So I always talk to people about their lives,
But as directors, you guys meet at these awards.
Where are you going with
No,
this?
I'm asking.
Where are you going with
I'm
this?
asking. Good, how was couch casting? Did you even have a couch back in the 70s?
In fact, I don't. Maybe I must get. In fact, I've recently been thinking I must get a couch, but I don't have a couch. And I take quite a long time doing auditions, and I do improv with people. And a lot of actors enjoy that and like that. There are a few actors that really hate it. Like Tim and Corsi really hates it. But no. I do remember we did at one stage have a person that was coordinating extras, and we found out that
They were busy.
couch casting or whatever was happening there, but we ended that very quickly.
Yeah, you have to, man.
So, no.
And then what? Are you married?
I am married.
Oh, how long have you been married for?
You're putting me on the spot again. 1990.
Whoa.
So
And
When
we were
YIZO came
together.
out.
We were together many years before that.
Wow.
So yeah, we've been together a long, long time, and I've got 3 sons who are sort of 30ish.
Oh, beautiful. So I'm old enough to be a son.
Young enough, yeah. Yeah.
No, beautiful, man. I wanted to ask you, how come you've never moved to Hollywood, like permanently?
So there was a moment. So when I did the Mandela autobiographical documentary, it was nominated for an Oscar. So I went to the Oscars.
With Justin Chadwick, eh?
Justin Chadwick.
That was...
No. It was a documentary.
Oh, okay.
So it was nominated for Best Documentary. And it was up against Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
This great film called Rumble in the Jungle. And so when you're nominated for an Oscar and you go to Los Angeles, my experience was that every agency talks to you. They say, hey, can we have a meeting? Can we do lunch? Whatever. And every autograph seeker seeks your autograph because they're investing in the future. Like, if you win, okay, we got the autograph of the guy that won. And if you lose, they chuck you out there.
Yeah, oh, okay.
So anyway, I lost.
So they chucked you out.
But I remember at the time people saying, if you have an Oscar nomination, you are crazy to leave Los Angeles.
Yes.
Because it puts you in a different league.
Yeah.
And I remember I was there with my wife, and I woke up at 5 the next morning after the Oscars. I mean, we must have had 2 hours sleep because we had been to the Oscar party afterwards.
Yes.
And I said to her, I want to get out of here. And we drove to the airport and we flew to New York. And the point is that, okay, if I'd stayed there, I don't know what my career would have been. But I came back here, and I've had a career that I wouldn't change for anything.
No regrets.
I came back here and I made YIZO.
Wouldn't have had YIZO.
So what would I have done in Los Angeles? I don't know. So I do feel extremely rooted here.
And also, there's no place like SA, man.
No, there isn't.
Oh, man. Really, you got to travel to understand that. Like, It's a cheesy line, but it's...
Yeah, I mean, boy, we have our problems, but we are very particular, and there is something about the way in which we are particular that I love. I sort of, any story that I imagine has to do with our national psyche and being here in a way. So
please do something about vendor people, man. We've got some great vendor people.
I hear you. No, but that was our original idea.
Yes.
Was like, we're going to take the narratives that haven't been told and make those. And instead, we made the narrative that's been told.
Too many times.
Anyway.
Yeah. 2 quick questions.
Yeah.
I think you told us how the name Bomb came about.
Yeah.
But who decided? How did you decide on that line by Chavas in YIZO Ukren Joe? I think you were speaking to Fana Mukwena's character. How did you know that's the line you're gonna use? I don't know what you call it in jargon. That line.
Okay, so there's a case in point. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. So the guy that did the music on Shaka, or one of the people on Shaka, together. I mean, he also did the music on YIZO. And we said to him, hey, we have to do a sting.
A sting, yes.
Yes, that's
for our logo. Because we had, after YIZO, we said, oh, we better have a bomb sting. and he came up with it. And it was so brilliant. And most people don't know what it's from. So you're a...
Yeah, I know it's from. I remember watching YIZO and hearing Java go Ukraine Joe. I was like, oh, fuck. Yeah. That's where it's from.
Yeah. So Philip Miller is the guy that made that. No, but of course, Mishak is the guy that spoke it. Yeah.
What do you say to people that say, why is a white person telling black stories? What do you have to say about that?
I apologize. I don't know.
You apologize.
I don't know.
Apology accepted, right?
But in closing, Angus, what do you want to be remembered as, man?
I don't know if I will be remembered. I think hopefully some of the things I made will be remembered. Yeah.
So you just want your work to be remembered?
Yeah.
Nice. What's in the pipeline? What's going on? What are we doing?
Well, I mean, 2 and 3 of Shaka. But I have this film that I wrote 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is a gladiator film set in near future Johannesburg.
Wow.
And I wrote it 14 years ago for Mduduzi, who I really loved as an actor. Mduduzi Mabasa, you know who he is?
Yes, of course.
I really love him. And he really loved the project. And it was this huge budget project. And year after year went by. And then he started saying to me, Angus, I'm getting older. And the thing is, it's a love triangle, and the other part of the triangle, the one side of the triangle is 20 years old. So there was a point at which you thought, okay, this is not going to work. So then I went to Mdu and I said, look, I've met this actor. The first time I met Tim Nkosi was on Shaka, and I think he can take over your role.
Ooh.
And I felt terrible about it because Mduduzi has been
your guy.
I wrote it for him and everything. Anyway, Mduduzi agreed. He had agreed that he had sort of was past the moment, and there's another character that he would play. But anyway, it's a huge project that I really love, and it's like an action film, but it is about family, and it is a love story as well. But it's huge, and I'm hoping that maybe iLembe will give us the wings to be able to make that.
What is iLembe causing waves overseas, like internationally, or not so much?
I think it's going to be a slow brew. I think. I recently was in London, and I showed it to about 20 people. And it was a combination of people that were Londoners and then South Africans that had been in London for about 20 years kind of thing. And the response to it was quite extraordinary. So I sort of feel, well, okay.
Yeah, no, it's going far,
it should find an audience abroad.
Definitely.
But that's to be discovered.
Yeah.
Are we only gonna get three seasons of iLembe?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yo.
But I trust we will.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I think go out while you're still on top, bro.
Yeah, true. And also it's based on Shaka, so I mean,
Yeah, we've got to take
can
him
only
on,
be so long
take
till
him
he
on the
dies.
journey. Yeah.
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 So who from the team said you mustn't come here? I know the writing team said you must come, ne?
Oh, that's a secret. But it was...
Nandi, what's her name?
Nomzamo.
Definitely.
It was not one person. The one guy said, he's going to say to you, who have you smashed on set? So I said to him, what does smash mean? I was like,
He's clearly not a chiller, eh?
Nah, come on, he's not even on Twitter. Anyway, come on, obviously not.
No, I'm saying the guy who said would ask who would you smash.
Oh,
Clearly not
yeah,
a chiller.
definitely. Yeah.
We haven't asked that in like when? Since like last year or
that's the
something.
narrative. People don't even watch the podcast. They think we just come here and talk about.
yeah, so they dissed you, like, you know, with
Yeah,
no
no, we're
good
used
reason.
to it,
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
We're used to it.
Yeah.
What are you gonna go and tell them now that you've done the podcast?
I said they could be my sons.
And that they're gonna make a cameo on Shaka iLembe season 2. Work on your Zulu, Mac.
Yeah, and I'll work on it, man. Mr. Angus, thank you so much, man. Like, you have no idea. Your work
We've
has
got
been
to do
amazing.
the selfie, huh?
Yeah, we're going to do
Yeah.
the selfie.
Yeah, definitely.
Straight up. You want to do it on camera now or when we're done? Let's just do it now.
Yeah.
Let's just do it now. It's your first selfie ever.
Yeah. How do we do it? Yeah. Yeah.
Penduka, you'll join us, ne?
Yeah.
Come join us, man.
Are we doing
So
proper
hang on.
selfie? As in
How do
you
we do
hold
this?
So we just look at the
Where am I
camera,
going to
yeah?
be?
In the center, man.
In the center.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, you need to come in.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, let me
shit.
wrap up. Yeah, let me wrap
Yeah,
up.
let's wrap up.
But anyway, podcast and Jimmy out here, man.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mr. Angus. Let's take this selfie.
Oh, man.
Welcome to Black Excellence. Do not fear, for if you do, just sip on some grandeur. And if you still do, ask ourselves, what would Mapapunzi do? Parama chila, itlasha lefiki. Ungoyiki, even if when they ask you, how sabiini, do not fear. For if you do, just say, Anistivi. This is the medicine of censorship. This is the pill. Which one is that one? Podcast and chill.